people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Mexican danger woman Kenya Enriquez took to social media to express her interest in a Marlen Esparza title fight on the heels of Marlen Esparza's successful title defense of her 2 alphabet titles this past weekend against the challenger, Eva Guzman. Kenya stated, "I hope with all my heart that it will soon.
That it will be soon.
That her title shot will be soon," and she tagged the WBC and Mauricio Suleiman, the WBC's president, stating, "Ranked #1 flyweight. I hope to win that opportunity and fulfill my dream of being crowned again." Now, I don't know here and now that Kenya Enriquez is the mandatory challenger for Marlen Esparza's title. I don't know that she has already achieved interim status. In the last 2 or 3 years, Kenya Enriquez has only fought once, just once.
In January of 2020, before the pandemic hit and shut everything down, Kenya fought once, and that was the only fight she had that entire year.
And she didn't fight at all last year. She returned to action in May of this year, and in that way, she's only actually had about one fight in the last 2 years.
I don't know if she achieved interim status in that one fight, but I really don't think so. That was just a comeback fight.
A sorely needed tune-up fight against a journeywoman-level opponent in Gabriela Zepada, sported a professional record of 8 wins and 4 losses.
I think that Kenya might have to fight in at least one more fight before she can achieve interim status to thereby become the mandatory challenger for Marlen Esparza's title.
That might be the way that cookie crumbles, the way all of that breaks down. Ranked directly behind Kenya Enriquez is former WBC champion and her countrywoman, Ibeth Zamora Silva.
And ranked right behind Ibeth is yet another former champion, former WBA champion of Japan, Naoko Fujioka.
And ranked right behind Naoko Fujioka is yet another former champion, former WBO champion of Argentina, Deborah Ana E. Lopez. The way this breaks down, Kenya may have to face a former champion.
In order to achieve interim status, she might, because I'm not sure she's there yet, though on the premise that she is.
Kenya Enriquez sports professional record of 24 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 10 knockouts. Having never been stopped, she's a few years younger than Marlen Esparza. Marlen sports a professional record of 13 wins, 1 loss, no draws, 1 knockout.
She also has never been stopped.
Marlen Esparza's lone defeat came at the hands of Senicia Estriada. I'm sure you're all aware. Kenya Enriquez's lone defeat came at the hands of Melissa McMurrow some years ago in 2015. She lost a split decision to Melissa.
And as stated, so far, Kenya Enriquez has only seen action once in the last 2 years, this past May against Gabriela Zepada,
who retired in her corner in the 9th round. Now, to Marlen Esparza, what Kenya Enriquez is a high-risk, low-reward fight.
What she is, even though Kenya hasn't been that busy the last couple of years. She fought only once in 2018.
Only once in 2019. Only once in 2020. Not at all in 2021. And only once this year. She still is a high-risk, low-reward opponent. She still is a capable and dangerous fighter. A dangerous puncher.
There's not much in it for Marlen Esparza when it comes to a Kenya Enriquez fight. And for fighting Kenya Enriquez, you might as well run risks with one of the other champions at this weight.
Which is what Marlen Esparza plans on doing. We talked about it in my previous video. According to Marlen Esparza, they're already en route to a unification match with Argentina's newly crowned champion, Gabriela Alanis. A big puncher, the same way that Kenya Enriquez is a big puncher, though not as experienced.
She hasn't been facing the same level of competition as either Marlen Esparza or Kenya Enriquez, though she is a champion, an unbeaten one.
An unbeaten champion in her prime. That's who Marlen Esparza plans on fighting in the next fight. Marlen Esparza, who's 33 years old, to Kenya Enriquez, who's 28.
Even though Kenya Enriquez has a lot more pro fights than Marlen Esparza is some years older.
But 5 years older than Kenya Enriquez, and Kenya wants the action. She wants some smoke, and I don't think she's going to get it, at least not this this time. Not at this time, and not in Marlon Esparza's next fight.
And because Kenya Enriquez isn't with a major promotional outfit that would apply pressure on the WBC to order a fight between them, it's hard to say.
Hard to get a fix on when exactly we can expect to see an Enriquez versus Esparza fight. The WBC has left Kenya Enriquez's career lying in limbo, waiting for a title shot at least once before down there at light flyweight with Yesenia Gomez.
Kenya Enriquez was interim champion for 3 years, and at no point in those 3 years did WBC order a fight between Kenya and Yesenia. That was at light flyweight.
She's at flyweight now. She has since moved up in weight, and it could be more of the same at flyweight as well.
Don't misinterpret my skepticism for an aversion to the fight. I like the idea of Enriquez versus Esparza.
I just don't get the sense we're going to see that fight this year. Not based on Marlon Esparza's plan to unify titles with Gabriela Alanis before this year is out. Thus, the window of opportunity to do a fight between the winner of that fight and Kenya Enriquez would have to be next year.
Kenya Enriquez ain't the kind of fighter that you just fight on a whim.
There's a very similar element of danger in association with an Enriquez fight to what Marlon would be facing in an Alanis fight, minus the alphabet title.
I'm saying it now. I'm not expecting that to happen this year.
In men's lightweight and super lightweight news, I'm sure most of you have heard by now, Oscar De La Hoya is moving on from Garcia versus Davis fight.
Surprise, surprise.
New opponent lined up. Now, not but a few days ago, things seemed a little bit more encouraging. At least the news wasn't quite as somber. That was just a few days ago. A few days later, the story, according to Oscar, is we're trying to get a hold of Tankside. We don't know who to talk to. Nobody picks up their phone. Nobody calls back. I feel they're playing games. So I'm moving on, and I'm going to Teofimo's fight next week.
This isn't the first that we've heard of this. We heard Ryan say something similar, that if they can't get Gervonta Davis, they'll look to fight Teofimo Lopez.
Teofimo's supposed to be returning to action this weekend, making his 140-pound debut against Pedro Campas.
Even though it's not a high-profile fight, it is a high-profile return. I think a lot of people are going to be watching that fight. They want to see how Teofimo holds up.
We know that last year Teofimo Lopez experienced a bit of a rough patch. Losing those alphabet titles in that shock upset loss to George Kambosos, that wasn't all that Teofimo was going through. His tumultuous family issues, the divorce with his newlywed wife.
It was just a mess all around.
Now he's on the mend, now he's on the rebound, and he's supposed to be returning to action this weekend. According to Oscar, he's going to be there. He wants to talk to that guy. He wants to set up a fight between him and Ryan Garcia, where the story a few days ago, per a tweet from Michael Benson, was Stefan Espinoza has revealed that discussions are now underway to potentially make Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia next.
Now the story, according to Oscar, is nobody's picking up the phone over there.
They can't get in contact with Gervonta Davis's people, if you can believe that. If you can believe they can't get in contact with Leonard Smellerby, who spends an awful lot of time on social media.
Apparently Oscar can't reach him.
So they're moving on, and they're zeroing in on a potential Ryan Garcia versus Teofimo Lopez fight. Yet another empty promise from where I'm sitting. I told you weeks ago, I didn't believe for a second that Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia as a fight would materialize later on this year, regardless of what they were saying, regardless of what was being put out there to the media.
I can only tell you now what I told you before. Team Davis is playing the same game that Team Garcia is playing.
The same game that Oscar De La Hoya is playing when he says that he can't get in contact with anybody over there. He can't reach anybody over there at Team Davis. They know what they're doing.
Both sides do, and neither side of that argument, neither side of that coin was actually expecting to get that fight done before this year is out.
Get real. There are obvious issues in association with the Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis fight that need to be addressed. Who's going to do the fight? Where is it going to happen? Is it going to happen on Showtime, or is it going to happen on DAZN? Is the pot big enough that both promotional outfits and both platforms can be involved? Because they want to be.
The way it breaks down, if the pot's not big enough to where both sides, both platforms, both promoters can turn over a profit, you know what happens?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Nothing happens.
Which is where we are with the Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight. If the pot's not big enough to where both promoters and both platforms can turn over a profit, they're not going to do the fight. They're not just going to ship out Ryan Garcia to Showtime, and Showtime's not just going to ship out Gervonta Davis to DAZN. Oscar proposes they do a joint pay-per-view, but in order to do a joint pay-per-view, the pot has to be big enough. Big enough that both sides, both platforms, both promoters can turn over a profit. And while
Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis has the potential to be a commercially successful fight, it's not that big a fight. Not big enough that you can involve two separate promotional outfits and two separate platforms and hope to turn over a profit.
right now, it's big enough that one promoter and one platform might be able to turn over a profit from that fight, but not two.
Not yet anyways, maybe over time, but not now.
And Oscar De La Hoya knows that just as much as Leonard Ellerbe, just as much as I or you. The whole thing was a pipe dream, and they knew that. They didn't seriously aspire to get that fight over the line before this year is out, and in truth, I get the same feeling when it comes to this fight, this potential Teofimo Lopez fight. You know what I think this is? They knew weeks ago that Teofimo was on the comeback trail. They knew weeks ago that he would return to action before summer's end. And what they did was attach Ryan's name to Teofimo's so they can ride that wave, however big or small that wave is.
I think Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy have a better relationship with Top Rank than they do with Showtime and the PBC.
I think they do, but what I don't think is that Top Rank, should Teofimo Lopez emerge victorious this weekend, gets himself back in the winner's bracket, I don't think they're just going to ship him off to Golden Boy Promotions and DAZN. Bob Arum has expressed serious aversions in the past to shipping off his fighters over to the DAZN platform in reference to the Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol fight.
We talked about that here on the channel, how Bob doesn't want to send his guys over there.
At least not right now. Do you think he's just going to send Teofimo Lopez, should he get himself back in the winner's bracket, over to Golden Boy Promotions?
Once again, don't misunderstand me.
Don't confuse my skepticism with an aversion to the fight. If they can do the fight, I'd gladly watch it, but I don't think they can do it. I don't think they will, because this fight has similar platform and promotional issues to the Davis fight.
What, they're just going to wheel out Teofimo Lopez to Golden Boy Promotions and DAZN? No fuss, no muss. Is that it?
Is that what we're expecting, or are we expecting Ryan Garcia to pop up over there on the Top Rank and ESPN side of things? Because there's only so many ways it can happen.
We're going to rehatch the virtues and drawbacks of a joint pay-per-view between Top Rank and Golden Boy?
The pros and cons of a joint pay-per-view between two separate promotional outfits, two separate platforms who want to have their finger in that pie.
Well, you're going to need a bigger pie.
And because I'm not actually expecting Ryan Garcia to get Teofimo Lopez in the ring, the search begins for Ryan Garcia's next opponent. You know, initially, I thought that Ryan Garcia, in his next fight, might share the ring with his Golden Boy Promotions stablemate, Jojo Diaz, who has expressed some interest in the past in facing Ryan Garcia. But apparently, Jojo Diaz is going to be taking on William Zepada, yet another Golden Boy Promotions fighter.
That's a good fucking fight, by the way.
William Zepada, who sports a professional record of 26 wins, no losses, no draws, with 23 knockouts. Jojo Diaz, the former super featherweight IBF champion, now campaigning as a lightweight.
Sporting a professional record of 32 wins, 2 losses with 1 draw.
15 knockouts. He's coming right off that decision loss to Devine Haney in December of last year. This fight is supposed to go down in November of this year. In that way, it will have been approximately 11 months' time since Jojo Diaz saw action, since Jojo Diaz had a fight the night of the fight with William Zepada. And it is an interesting engagement. It is an interesting affair, but essentially what it means is that if Jojo Diaz is fighting William Zepada, he's not fighting Ryan Garcia.
And I don't actually think Ryan's going to get Teofimo Lopez in the ring, so the question is, who is Ryan going to fight next? Because he's not fighting Gervonta, and he ain't going to fight Teofimo.
The Isaac Cruz fight, the potential Isaac Cruz fight for Ryan Garcia, that's turned out to be a bust. Isaac Cruz is supposed to be returning to action on the undercard of Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz. That's yet another fight that has the potential to be a commercially successful fight, a commercially viable fight, but Isaac Cruz is over there isolated from the rest of the lightweight division on PBC Island.
He's not going to cross over to DAZN, and he's not going to move up to 140 pounds for Ryan Garcia, so that's a bust.
Not about to happen. There are still 4 months left in the year of 2022, and the million-dollar question now is, who is Ryan Garcia going to fight?
You know, Gervonta Davis, he's still at lightweight. He could do a rematch with Isaac Cruz if Isaac wins his next fight.
He could fight unbeaten up-and-comer Michelle Rivera, who's been calling him out. Michelle Rivera of the Dominican Republic, who bears a slight resemblance to Muhammad Ali. At least that's what some people say. Other people say he looks
more like Julian Jackson, but it's neither here nor there. He may end up fighting Gervonta.
Gervonta He's got one or two options over there on PBC Island, but what are Ryan's options now that he's campaigning north of 135 pounds, upstairs at super lightweight?
That's the question.
And finally, ahead of his upcoming rematch with Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder's longtime manager, Shelly Finkle, says a Joshua fight is enormous, even if he loses to Usyk, and I think he's onto something. I mean, I don't disagree with that fight could still yield a lot of marquee value, even if Anthony Joshua falters for the second time. That's not far-fetched. I mean, look at Derek Chisora. He's got losses in the double digits, but he can still put asses in the seats.
Yeah, I think that fight could still do good at the box office, do good at the gate, but I also think that fight still has the same problems now that it had before.
Network issues, promotional issues, who's going to do the fight, who's going to distribute it, on what platforms, who's going to cross over to whose side of the street.
Do you notice that whenever Anthony Joshua has a fight coming up, Team Wilder and Team Fury are all over the place?
That's when they want to start talking about what they're about to do. That's when you start hearing news in reference to those fighters.
It's not by accident, it's by design.
I don't know anyone else's numbers or money. It's not my business. But I heard that the Saudis put up a lot of money for Joshua to fight Usyk over there, Finkle said. I don't believe Joshua versus Usyk now is as big as Fury versus Usyk is. And being for all the belts, the Saudis may step up. Who knows? So there's a lot of moving pieces. But what I do know is there's 4 big names at this point, and that is Fury, Usyk, Joshua, and Deontay. And this month, 2 of those guys will be fighting, and that will clarify what the future is.
Shelly's back to his old tricks.
That's what all of this talk from Shelly Finkle heralds. It harkens back to a time approximately 2 or 3 years ago when Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder was all people were talking about. It's all you could hear about at that time, and I just get the sense that what Shelly's doing here is trying to ride Anthony Joshua's wave
with no real intentions of doing the fight, because the issues that prevented the fight from happening before are still in play now.
Over $100 million was not enough to get Deontay Wilder in the ring with Anthony Joshua approximately 2 or 3 years ago. A little over $100 million, and the chance to become his division's undisputed champion. One face, one name,
right,
and all of that crap.
Right.
To do this fight, somebody's either going to have to cross the street, or you will have to attempt to do a joint pay-per-view. And that's easier said than done, because in all likelihood, DAZN is going to want the U.S. rights to that fight. It's not the easiest situation to negotiate. It wasn't easy before, it's not easy now.
DAZN's going to want the U.S. rights and Showtime.
This is promotion by way of name association, if it's anything. Shelly Finkle touched on the idea of the undisputed title fight being contested between Usyk and Tyson Fury. And you know, in order for that to happen, Usyk's got to win the second fight. He's got to win the rematch. He talked about the Saudis potentially stepping up to carry that fight the same way they stepped up to carry this fight. Though in truth, it's not like the Saudis pick up just any big fight.
They didn't pick up any of the Wilder versus Fury fights.
They didn't pick up Crawford versus Pacquiao when Bob Arum sought funding in the Middle East for that fight. Didn't have any luck, and they didn't pick up Crawford versus Spence.
Really only seem to get involved when Anthony Joshua's in the picture, when Anthony Joshua is involved.
So if it comes down to Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world, will the Saudis put a bid in? Will they get involved?
That's the question.